Complications of the bronchiectasis. Recurrent pneumonia, empyema, pneumothorax, lung abscess, amyloidosis, metastatic abscess, they are all the important problems which can happen. It does not lead to bronchogenic carcinoma by itself is what need to be remembered. That is the reason, doctor, any case of COPD or bronchiectasis, if they happen to develop hemoptysis, you should never leave them that easily, is what need to be remembered. Probably you need to revisit your diagnosis, because otherwise they by themselves are not capable of causing the hemoptysis unless there is some underlying malignancy which you are missing in your diagnosis. Now let us talk about the idiopathic fibrosis of lung. Is it a restrictive lung disease or an obstructive lung disease, doctor? The idiopathic fibrosis of lung, it is a restrictive purely, no obstructive. If it is not obstructive, how can the total lung volume can increase on giving the salbutamol therapy? It does not lead to. Only other itch that we have in the exam is, does it lead to development of carcinoma of lung? Very much it leads to, doctor. Basically it can lead to pneumothorax, infection, carcinoma, thromboembolism and cor pulmonale. They are all the risk factors with the idiopathic fibrosis of the lung is what need to be basically remembered. Now in the Mycobacterium avium intracellular, what are the common drugs that we use? Rifamycin, ethambutol and clarithromycin, amikacin, streptomycin, isoniazid, all of these are having a very important role. Now what is the various conditions called the myeloproliferative disorders? There is French, American, British classification of the myeloproliferative disorders and WHO classification. So typically, doctor, chronic myelogenous leukemia, essential thrombocythemia, polycythemia vera and angiogenic myeloid metaplasia according to FAB classification. According to the WHO classification, you are also having the chronic eosinophilic leukemia is what need to be basically remembered. Now where do you find a proliferative center in the lymph node? What is your answer? I mean among the people who answered the paper. Sarcoidosis? Or do you think that B cell lymphoma or T cell lymphoma? Was it the same question? Pardon? Burkitt's lymphoma was also one of the options. Okay. Actually, I could not get a reference for this question. We will try to, at the end we will discuss on this. But at least one thing is very sure, doctor. Infectious mononucleosis typically leads to development of a proliferation of the cells, but in the periphery of the lymph node, but not in the center of the lymph node. So there is no chance that it can be infectious mononucleosis. Second thing is the sarcoidosis. Basically does not lead to any necrosis at all. It is not a caseating necrosis at all. It is a non-caseous necrosis happening in the center. So necrosis is not proliferation. So it also can be unlikely. So I am not very sure about the other options. Now let us talk about the Hashimoto's thyroiditis. Hashimoto's thyroiditis typically predominantly it is the Hodgkin's B cell lymphoma is the one which is commonly seen. If at all the lymphoma develops in the Hashimoto is what need to be basically remembered. What were the any other options were there, doctor? Other than this? Hodgkin's was there? Okay. So basically it is the Hodgkin's, non-Hodgkin's B cell lymphoma is the one which accounts for 1 to 3% of the primary thyroid malignancy. Commonly in the setting of the Hashimoto is what need to be basically remembered. Now A wave is absent in the case of the atrial fibrillation is a common question that we often discuss. Now subclavian steal syndrome, what is the meaning of it, doctor? Typically in the proximal to the origin of the vertebral artery, there is an occlusion which is there. So whenever the individual happens to exercise his arm, there is a decreased perfusion to the brain leading to the syncopal attacks. So exercise of the arm is never encouraged in the case of the subclavian steal syndrome is what need to be remembered. It is the first part of the subclavian definitely where the stenotic lesion is located is what you can be able to confidently remember. And generally it is asymptomatic is what need to be basically remembered. Only at the time of exercise of the ipsilateral arm the symptoms will come out. Now let us talk about the atrial myxoma. Was the option A was there, doctor? Left atrium, it is the most common location. Okay. Now let us try to talk about the other options which are being given. Typically, doctor, myxomas constitute 40 to 50% of the primary cardiac tumors. 90% are solitary. 75 to 80% are typically located in the left atrial cavity, and up to 25% are there in the right atrium. 10% are autosomal dominant mode, they become transmitted, and multiple tumors are also seen typically as 50% of cases which are familial in nature, which are in the atrial myxoma is what need to be remembered. But multiple familial atrial myxomas are more likely in the ventricle, not the left atrium, is what need to be basically remembered. Now coming to the surgery, the recurrence rate is 1 to 5%, not 15%, is what need to be remembered. And the recurrence can occur even after about, within generally about 4 years is what need to be remembered. And generally it is the incomplete excision of the tumor which is most commonly responsible for the recurrence is what need to be basically remembered. Now coming to the nosocomial infections, what was the option D in this, doctor? Yes? Huh? Cellulitis was also there in the options. Okay, let us talk about it. Bloodstream infections are responsible for 28% cases of nosocomial infections is what need to be remembered according to one of the biggest surveys that had been done. Then comes the ventilator associated pneumonias, 21% cases. Urinary tract infections 15%. Lower respiratory tract is 12%. GIT, skin, cellulitis, soft tissue, etc. 10%. Surgical site infections are 7%. That's the reason, doctor. UTI is 15%, which is more than the pneumonia, which is 12%, is what need to be basically remembered. And upper respiratory tract much lesser than that. Now, 25-year-old has got macroadenoma of the pituitary. No visual disturbances are there, and the prolactin levels are increased, that is 250. Is it the same frame of the question? Yes? More than 120 or 250, increased levels of prolactin. How do you want to manage this given case? Very simple. Basically, if there is a microprolactinoma, you can observe, you can procrastinate, you can evaluate over a period of time by doing the prolactin levels. The rule is, if it is macroadenoma, there is no role for observation at all. Why in microadenoma observation is still permitted? Because in any friendship there is a scope for adjustment for a while. There are certain features which will clearly say adjustment is impossible. It has grown macro means that itself says its proliferative rate is very high. So no role for observation or conservative management if it is a macroadenoma. Definitely it is surgery only. Now the next important question is, transsphenoidal pituitary adenectomy is the surgery of choice. So especially the women who have microadenoma, for them also there is a role. When is there a role? Though it is a microadenoma in the case of the women, if they want to go for pregnancy. Because most of these drugs, bromocriptine, etc., will interfere with the dopamine, etc. So it is not compatible with the pregnancy. So that is the reason there, though it is a microadenoma, if they are desirous of pregnancy and if she is a woman, then there is a role for the surgery is what need to be remembered. So similarly, those who are not responding to the medical treatment also, who show progression, then there is a requirement for surgery. And typically those who do not wish to take the therapy also on long term, there is a requirement for the surgery. So now let us talk about the options which are available for us. In this given case, there are no visual symptoms. That means it has not grown big enough mandating the surgery. But at the same time, without neither giving medical therapy nor surgical therapy, waiting also is not permitted. Because already it is a macroadenoma. Hence, what is there between observation and surgery? Medical management is considered to be the management of choice, is what need to be basically remembered. Zoster encephalitis typically involves the temporal lobe and the pons is what need to be basically remembered. Popcorn calcification is seen in the case of the hematomas, which is virtually diagnostic of hematomas. Coming to the iron deficiency, is it the same question? Best indicator on any given day would be the? Best indicator of? No, the question is, to diagnose iron deficiency anemia, what is the best indicator or? Okay, whatever. There are two forms of iron. Storage iron and non-storage iron. Was the hemosiderin or anything was there in the other options? It was not. Ferritin was there, right? So ferritin would be a fairly good answer. Now why goitrogens lead to development of a goitrous enlargement? Because TSH will be excessive and that leads to it. Now roseola infantum, was the option was there as not contagious? It was there? Right. But it is definitely contagious, roseola infantum. It is not contagious, but the literature clearly says that typically the Roseola infantum, the respiratory secretions of the asymptomatic individual are capable of transmitting the virus. So contagious means what? Contact leading to this. I mean, suppose if I transmit through my droplets, it is not called contagious. Okay. Yes? That was the option which was there. This contagious option was also there? Okay, okay. Dry climate was not there. Which is the cooked option among the four? 5 to 8 years was also there or not? Okay, anyway, let us talk at least the facts about the Roseola infantum, doctor. HHV6 is very much there, which is responsible. It is within the first 2 years of life with a peak occurrence in the infants. Between 9 to 21 months is considered to be the common age. It is the spring and the fall during which it typically appears, and it is the sixth of the traditional exanthematous fevers is what need to be remembered. And typically there is a prodromal febrile illness which will continue for about 3 days. After that there is a defervescence with the development of the rash, and also it is capable of getting transmitted by the secretions. Now you need to basically reconstitute what were the options which are given and give us a feedback.